Buenas tardes, good afternoon. Welcome to the Palacio de Corvina. Welcome to the second edition of MARPE Talks. It's a real pleasure to welcome back to Valencia our partners in the MARPE network and to host a new activity which forms part of the Erasmus Plus MARPE Diplo project. In this brief introduction, I'd like to present the MARPE network to you all. Firstly, I'd like to point out to everyone who the MARPE network core partners are, each of which has a representative here today. They are the Valiente University College Ghent with Anne-Marie Coton, the University of Lorraine with Hélène Boulanger, the University of Lisbon with Susana Carvalho Espinola, the University of Bucharest with Anne Canton, and of course the CEU Cardenal Herrera University with Sandra Femenia, Pepe Martínez, Manolo Millán y Elvira Canós. The MARPE María Puchat, perdón. The MARPE network began more than 30 years ago as a Umbrella project aimed at the development of a pan-European public relations academic platform. Its aim was to become leading body in academia, learning, research and training in public relations in Europe. MARPE continued to develop and was structured in terms of three language lines: the English line, the French line between Nancy and Bucharest, and the Iberian line between Valencia and Lisbon. The most important thing to note is that over this whole period, the network has continued to evolve and adapt just as the field itself has evolved. We can therefore say that the MARPE network journey has taken us from public relations to strategic communication, from there to lobbying and public affairs, from public affairs and transparency in governance to public, civic and corporate diplomacy, our current focus. And throughout this period, a huge amount of work has been carried out. Countless presentations, seminars, conferences, and so many hours of education and training provided to students across Europe. In this respect, I'd like to highlight the intensive programs in which our students have shared their insights with others from all over Europe. The three intensive programs regarding public relations, government relations and lobbying in an European perspective aim to expand the students' understanding of public relations and its practice in the EU and global context, and are notable for their innovative pedagogical approach. It has been an exciting journey on the good ship MARPE, and every ship needs a captain to keep it on the right course. Our much loved Anne-Marie Coton has been the captain we needed. There would be no MARPE without her. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. The other members of the group have made great contributions too. We have a great relationship with our partner on the Iberian line, Susana Carvalho Espinola. We have been very lucky enough to work with Dr. Carvalho. Susana has been our companion throughout so many battles we have fought together. Anne Canton began her participation when she was practically a student. She is now a key part of the project and a leading figure in the field. Hélène Boulanger has been a touchstone for the project, something that has been demonstrated once again in the painstaking work she has undertaken on the MARPE Diplo project, while also carrying out her responsibilities as Vice President, Vice Rector, in charge of the Board of Directors of the University of Lorraine. Of course, I mustn't forget my colleagues here at CEU, Pepe Martínez and Sandra Femenia, who do us proud in everything they do to make the project come alive at the university and ensure they participate in the Erasmus Plus scheme. What they do should not be underestimated. I would also like to show my gratitude to those lecturers from audiovisual communication who have joined the project, Manolo Millán and Elvira Canós, in particular for producing the videos with which we publicize the content of MARPE Talks. We are proud to have been part of MARPE family from almost the very beginning, and we are always thankful for the hunger this family shows for new knowledge and expertise, which is something that we pass on to our students. The pride we feel fuels our commitment to the MARPE network. Today is the second MARPE Talk event of the Erasmus Plus MARPE Diplo project, focusing on the emerging concept of corporate diplomacy. To our guest speakers, the students and the organizers, thank you all for being here. We hope that this event will help us all to gain greater insight into corporate diplomacy and the opportunities that are now opening up for companies, professionals, academics, and students. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Anne-Marie Coton from Alberto University College.
Thank you very much, Maria Jose. I'm very happy to be here, and I would like to welcome all of you, and I would also like to really thank very much CU San Pablo for welcoming us here again. I may be a captain, but a captain needs a boat, and we have a very strong boat, and this strong boat is because we have our strategic partners who are our universities and institutes who are behind us and who really support us. So without our universities, we wouldn't be here. But of course, we are not only on a boat, we also have a lot of sailors together with us, and these sailors are from different boards. We are organizing our MARPE Diplo program with, of course, the support of Erasmus+, first and all for our students. These are the very first public we want to support, and we want to help to build a career and to be stronger on a very difficult market. So this is our very first aim, to develop a new curriculum, to develop new possibilities, new activities, which would make our students much stronger on a quite difficult world market. We want also, of course, to have different activities in which not only the students, but also the practitioners and the academics all work hand in hand together. This is why we have developed this activity, the MARPE Diplo Talks, in order not just to have the transfer of knowledge and competence between the academics and the students, but of course to have our practitioners together with us and to have their insights and to build on their insights, to reflect on their knowledge and their expertise, and together to go on a higher level altogether. And a third public we may not forget when we are developing projects and activities with Erasmus+, is of course the entire society. This is also why we have everything here recorded, why we do everything in open source. It's just because all the knowledge that we are building all together is not just for our direct publics, students, of course, our colleagues, and also all the practitioners and professionals who are working together with us, but also all the others who are not immediately with us, physically present, but who are sometimes in totally other parts of the world. I'm thinking about colleagues who are in Africa at this moment and who said, yes, we will probably be we will have possibly the possibility to follow you through your Facebook. This is also one of the reasons why we want to continue to engage ourselves, and we really thank you all for being with us and to participate into this very long journey, and we hope it's not coming to an end, but this is really just a new beginning, starting this MARPE Diplo project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you very much, Maria Jose, as Vice Rector, and Marie. Thank you very much for being here. Of course, thank you very much for all my family here in this table. Well, good afternoon and welcome to MARPE meeting here in Valencia. First of all, I would like to beg your pardon because of my broken English. As you perhaps know, it's not from Eton. So it has passed such a long time without speaking English, or sometimes probably I will get stuck a little bit. Many thanks to our colleagues from MARPE, almost all of them are great friends, for offering a space of knowledge and understanding between different countries in the era of the Huawei crisis. Perhaps things are going to change in the future, who knows? Which is sure to be spoken at some point of the day. I don't know if anyone is thinking of, I don't know, to give was a question about it. I belong to a different field, journalism. We are not the enemy, we are an ally. Okay? Last Friday, in this place, celebrating the Internet Day, some of the best experts in Spanish and Valencian digital journalism meet to talk about the evolution of digital journalism. Among them, Mario Tascón, CEO of Prodigioso Volcán, this is a Spanish company. Also, Ismael Nafria, who is an expert, and consultant and author of the New York Times Revolution book. It was the resume of 20 years of research by a group funded by a ministry and led by Elvira García de Torres, professor of our university, who has researched the change in journalism in Spain and Latin America due to the new technologies. MARPE environment is almost more than double years researching like you explained before, and we are really grateful to hold all this meeting here. Today, we change to talk. We are not talking about journalism at the beginning. We're gonna even ponder about corporate diplomacy, and we do with some great speakers who will connect us to a brand new, not at all brand new, reality. As a dean, I want to thank the effort of all of you to have all of you what you've done to be here with us today. And I have to apologize for the absence of Roger Hayes, who had some problem with the flight connections or with the flight ticket. I don't remember exactly, sorry. Because he cannot accompany us today. Well, let's start with some smart rules of the games today. First of all, our speaker will give the dissertation of almost 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, each of them. And after the intervention of the last one, we will give the way to the questions to start a sort of discussion. So I encourage you to take notes, jot down, even draft notes, and think about your questions, which I presume there are going to be so many, sorry. No more delays. The first speaker is Mr. Ángel Alloza, who is here besides me. He's, I don't know if you want to... Thank you very much. Ángel Alloza was the last professional admirado, very professional of our faculties. Every year, every 2 years, we normally invite someone who really we admire from the profession, and we give him an award and a sort of image. Sometimes it's not the end of the career, the beginning of the career. Okay. Ángel Alloza, PhD, CEO, and Secretario General de la Fundación Corporate Excellence Center for the Reputation Leadership. He has a degree in psychology from the Complutense University of Madrid, PhD from IESE, Master in Innovation in Communication from the Jaume I University, and also he got his PhD in Communication from the same university. His professional career began as a qualitative and quantitative market research technician in Alva, strategic planning and Hot Walter Thompson. We were talking about Hot Walter Thompson because my wife worked there several years. And also, he managed part of Millward Brown International in Spain and Portugal. He joined Argentaria in the Strategic Analysis Unit within the presidency and risk area with the aim of defining and implementing a new strategy and positioning for the Argentaria brand. In 1998, in January 2000, BBA Bank joined the communication and image area. He joined the communication and image area, today communication and brand. Being responsible for the different functions, corporative advertisement, image, social action, brand, identity, reputation, metrics, so on. I was brought up in the paper, in the newspaper in the paper, so all the things changed a lot, the way we studied before in the university, and also when I started as I work as a journalist. Until February 2011, he is the strategic director of the global communication and brand area of the bank, with overall responsibility for communication strategy, brand, reputation, and metrics. Since April 2011, he is the CEO and General Secretary of Corporate Excellence Center for Reputation Leadership. Alloza is going to explain up-to-date research about corporate diplomacy, and we're really honored to be here with you today, and so you're free to start.
Thank you very much, Elias. Thanks a lot for giving us the opportunity to be here. We from Corporate Excellence are extremely satisfied to support this project, and I'm happy to be one of the sailors here, trying to bring a viewpoint from a practitioner. So I'm not an academic, so my viewpoint is this one, being responsible of different functions at the BBVA group, and starting this new idea of working together both academics and companies together with consultancy firms to advance in the territory of the intangibles. So I see that my voice is increasing. So I'm going to explain a little bit about who we are and what we do. And together with me, I have the privilege of having two other sailors. Alberto López Valenzuela from Alva Connected Intelligence. It is a consultancy firm, one of our alliances. And here I have the pleasure of sharing the table with Javier Valiente from Political Intelligence. So these two sailors, you see that the consultancy firms are using the term intelligence, so I'm sure that they're going to bring a lot of knowledge to all of us. So let's start by telling you who we are and what we do. It is not easy because it is quite unusual the kind of organizations that I'm dealing with. So the way of describing who we are is by telling you that we are an applied and research and knowledge center, non-profit, specialized in intangible assets and intangible resources. We created this place, if I may say, just because we need it. It was founded 15 years ago by these companies. You can see 23 companies. Maybe you're not familiar with the logos, but they represent more than 60% of the stock exchange in Spain. 23 companies belonging to 14 different sectors, and you see that direct competitors are working together. Amongst those 23 companies, there are 350 professionals in charge of public affairs, communications, reputation, brand, working together. And the reason why we decided to join forces, it is because the context has completely changed, and this change can be described as, if I may say, the intangible economy, which means that the proportion of value represented by intangible assets and resources for the largest companies in the USA represent more than 80% of the total value. If we take into account all the companies working all around the world, including different sizes and industries, we have 50% of the total value represented by the intangible side and 50% by the tangible one. You may say that maybe 30 years is a long period of time, but if you think in terms of economic cycles, it's nothing, it's very quickly. So it's a revolution, and companies are not prepared to manage the intangible side of the value and the risk. And that is the reason why we decided to join forces and to help each other. If I use the terminology of the investors, which is one of the forces behind this revolution, the reason why the intangibles have been growing so quickly is because all companies and organizations are dealing with 6 capitals. 2 of them are tangible, the financial capital and the manufacturer capital, which represented together, the 2 of them, more than 80% of the total value of companies until the 80s, at the end of the 80s. But there are other 4 intangible capitals that have been growing constantly. And the reason why we are supporting this project is because you see in the middle one of the capitals, which is crucial, social and relationship capital, together with people, together with innovation and the relationship of companies and organizations with the
the environment. Those 4 capitals have been growing constantly, and they represent, as I said, more than 80% of the total value and the risk of the largest companies in the world. So investors have understood perfectly this change in the context. And if I mention the letter written this year by the chairman of BlackRock, which is the largest institution in terms of institutional investment, the title of the letter was Purpose and Profit. Last year, the title of the letter was related to the 4 capitals, and the idea is very simple. We as investors cannot make a distinction between different companies if we have only information about the financial and manufacturer capital, which represent only 20% of the total value. So we need to know how companies are dealing with, in an integrated way, with the 6 capitals. And that is the reason why we need the help of the academics as well as the consultancy firms to transform our companies and the way we work in those companies, because we, as well as the rest of the companies with more than 10 years of existence, we have been dealing quite successfully with a world which no longer exists, with the tangibles. And we have been structured, and the functions of which has the great importance in companies are the functions which no longer are the key relevant functions to deal with the intangible side. And that's the reason why I think, and I feel that there's a huge opportunity for students and for professionals who are entering in the world of corporate diplomacy, in the world of communications, reputation, brand, and responsible business, because we need them urgently. And that's why I think that your project is so relevant. So what investors and what companies are trying to do is to integrate the 6 capitals into their business models and create something which is of strategic importance for organizations, which is building, in one way, a differentiation which cannot be copied, and on the other side, building the social legitimacy that we need to get our license to operate. Those are, if I summarize everything, those are the key things. Differentiation, able to attract capital, talent, clients, and on the other side we have legitimacy and trust to get our license to operate. And the 2 tools to build differentiation and trust are the purpose and the brand, the purpose and the corporate brand, and on the other side, the reputation management. And that's why we need to push these 2 disciplines. The idea of building an organization which has a clear purpose. And this purpose is, if I may say, a way of building inside the company a system of shared beliefs, starting with your employees. And if those employees are living those values are their own values, they will be willing to be the ambassadors of the company and be the most efficient agents of communication, as well as the ones who are building the reputation of the company. So everything is being constructed from inside out. So it's about the employees your current clients, the non-clients, and the citizens in general. So that is the reason why when I try to explain the purpose of corporate excellence, our purpose is helping organizations to build a strong reputation, because I think that this idea of building reputation, which means getting something which doesn't belong to you, because your reputation is not an asset, it is a resource, because it belongs to your stakeholders. So what you need to do is to try to gain from them their trust, their admiration, and their respect. So I think that this is the arena where companies, organizations, universities, cities, and countries are going to fight for being the well-reputed companies or organizations in their industry sector. In order to do that, what we do is we help the specific functions within the companies who are in charge of the key intangibles. That's why I'm mentioning 5 of them: reputation and reputational risks. The second one is purpose, corporate brand, process of alignment. The third one is communications, all channels, all stakeholders. The next one is CSR, responsible business, sustainability. The next one is public affairs and contextual intelligence. This idea of having a clear understanding of what are the expectancies of your stakeholders and introduce those expectations into the way you do your business. And finally, we are quite active into transversal activities, which is, first of all, the advanced metrics, because we need to demonstrate, if we were dealing with the financial side of the company, we don't have to do this extra effort, but we need to build KPIs and measurement standards. And that's why it is so important to work together with organizations like Connected Intelligence to be able to develop those measurements. And the other one is learning. We are building a new profession. And you know, the reason why we do quite a lot of our learning activities, we companies, is because when we have a conversation with a headhunter and we tell them we need someone who's able to manage in an integrated way communications, brand, reputation, public affairs, and metrics. You know what is the answer? They don't exist. That profile does not exist. And that's the reason why we started 7 years ago training people to become the directors of this area. And because we don't know exactly how to describe the function, finally we selected a title, which I don't think it's a good one, but it's just a consensus. So the title of this course is the Global Chief Communication Officer, Strategic Management of Brand Communications and Reputation. So it is a description of that specific role. So the purpose is providing organization with the key elements they need to build, from one hand, differentiation, from the other one is trust and legitimacy from their stakeholders by managing in an excellent way the intangible side of those companies. So the idea is helping them to create ethical, social, environmental, and economic value. And the way we do this is by creating alliances with academics and consultancy firms. I didn't know how to describe this idea, but fortunately an academic a couple of months ago wrote an article in well, it's not an article, it's a working paper in the Harvard Business Review. So Robert Kaplan mentioned in that article that the only way to advance in this field of the intangibles is by finding a place where companies can work together with consultancy firms and with academics. Bad news from Kaplan is that he says that it's very difficult to find a place like that in the real world. So I discovered that thanks to the experience and all the mistakes that we have done in the past, we have been able to create a place where we work together without any conflicts of interest. So we have an ecosystem of knowledge with more than 25 universities and business schools, and with about 20 consultancy firms all over the world. And we are developing and inventing things. But remember that we are not for profit. So what we do is to offer this knowledge to the rest of the companies all over the world, trying to help the practitioners developing standards of measurement, standards of understanding the concepts and sharing those standards to help each other. So that is what we do. Basically, it's about generating knowledge and networking. In this idea of generating knowledge, I think that we do develop, and the most interesting thing is that we have developed a knowledge center. And what we do is we read everything which is published all around the world, and we conduct research projects with our alliances. And what we do is we get all the information into this knowledge center. I will give you describe the way you can access that knowledge center, because it's open source. So and we develop some research projects. The left-hand side, I'm describing the ones that we have started this year. Two of them have to do with purpose, the definition of purpose, and also the measurement of how we can create value by defining and activating the corporate purpose in a company. The third one is about media mining. The next one is about reputation measurement. The following one is about the efficiency of communication. So it's a mathematical model to translate into euros the communication activities. The last one is accountability model in stakeholder engagement. So those are the current projects. And then I give only the title of the project that we are doing together with Javier Valiente from Political Intelligence. It's about the contribution, the measurement of the contribution of public affairs in large companies in Spain. So it's a work in progress that Javier is going to describe. We are going to start also a project with another large consultancy firm about the importance that the board of directors are giving to corporate reputation. Another one is for the Global Alliance. The Global Alliance, as you know, is a federation of associations of corporate communication directors all over the world. They represent 160,000 professionals, and they asked us to work on a global communication model. So we're going to present that research in 2020 in New Zealand. And let me come to the right-hand side. In this place, I describe the projects in which we are partners. And we are very happy to be partners of your projects. We have been also working together with universities, and we launched in 2015 an international conference on universities' reputation. There have been 3 international conferences, and the next one will be in October for the first time in Latin America. More than 300 universities from all over the world are coming to this conference. We're going to launch exactly the same thing, but regarding museums. It will be in October in Spain, the reputation of museums. With the Arthur Page Society, we have just started a new research on the role of the corporate communication directors. So it will be probably released in 1 year time. We have an observatory of the evolution of the intangible value of companies, thanks to our alliance with a UK consultancy firm called Brand Finance. So in the last 20 years, we have been tracking the value of the intangible side of companies all over the world. And finally, in talent metrics, we have an alliance with another university in Spain, and working together with them to demonstrate that if you invest in your employees, it is probably the best thing you can do to build not only reputation but also your business. I'm going to end by telling you a little bit about the publications that we produce. Just 1 second. I'm doing this because it's a bit difficult for me to see that screen. So the publications. Every year we publish a study. It takes about 1 year to produce that study. It is the 4th edition. This study is called Approaching the Future, Trends in Reputation Management and Trends in Intangible Assets Management. The report, the current report is available in Spanish and will be available in English in a few weeks. And we also publish quite a lot of research and papers, together with case studies. All of them are available in our knowledge center. And also we have, if I may say, a task, which is providing students and also professionals with handbooks in Spanish. The first one is about corporate brands, how to use a corporate brand as an alignment factor with Professor Kees van Riel. The second one is about corporate reputation. So myself and 2 other professors were working for a year and a half to produce this handbook. This one is also available in English. We presented the handbook in the Columbia University in New York a couple of years ago. The next one is about corporate communications and its contribution to reputation by Professor Argenti. And the latest one is about reputational risks. And hopefully, we are discussing with Alberto, hopefully we will have his book in Spanish next year. Our learning activities, I'm not going to describe those learning activities. It's basically helping companies to have someone in charge of this function of the integrated management of the intangibles. And the Knowledge Center. The Knowledge Center is a way of describing what the Knowledge Center is. So it's reading everything related to the intangible assets and resources and making this knowledge available to everyone in different ways. Starting by the right-hand side is the basic knowledge center. It's free access, more than 9,000 companies, academics, and consultancy firms are downloading our content. Unfortunately, the content is basically in Spanish. So 80% of the content is in Spanish, 20% in English. And then we have a specific one for academics. And the other two are restricted and private access. And we have to ask little money for that because we are a non-profit organization that have to survive. So that's the way of surviving. So that's the place where you can sign. And once you have signed into this knowledge center and also the newsletter, you are going to get free access of the basic knowledge center. So I invite you to do this. It takes only 5 minutes, and hopefully it may be useful for you. Thank you very much indeed.
Very inspiring, really. Thank you very much. Well, I got some rough notes. First of all, Ángel, yes, you are an academic. You have a PhD, a proper and real one. And also I really thank you a lot because you're always thinking about the connection about companies and also the university. Sometimes things are really developing so fast, and sometimes the academic people feel that the gap is increasing year by year, I think. Well, you say as well that you are sailors. I would say probably explorers. And I feel sometimes that you were people of the Navy and you belong people from the infantry. You know, because things are really bizarre a little bit. Well, also you say there's a revolution, how to manage with a new world. And also I think it's a new field for the new generation of the students. You have a huge opportunity here to join in this world. You also mentioned the investors. You mentioned BlackRock. Well, one of my friends worked in BlackRock, Madrid, but also in London. She's a sort of city slicker, you know. And she told me that they invest the amount of money, the GDP of Portugal, France, and Spain together. So it's a huge amount of money that they're moving. So it's a huge company. Well, this is real. To me, it's like a science fiction, really. It's impossible to understand at all. Okay, now we're gonna have the second speaker. We are pleased to have Javier Valiente, who is from Valencia, managing partner of political intelligence with more than 20 years of experience as a lobbyist in Madrid and Brussels. Javier oversees customer relations at the highest level, including focus on work, quality and services, and team coordination. As a managing partner in Spain and Portugal, he speaks Portuguese as well. I wish I would speak Portuguese as well as you. He has an extensive experience in the design of institutional strategies, the creation of coalitions, and the coordination of public affairs campaigns for leading companies in different sectors activity. Javier holds a degree in economic and business studies and a postgraduate in European affairs. He is founder and member of the board of directors of the Association of Institutional Relations and Professional, APRI, with more than 30,000 members. So you told me something like that, a huge amount. How many people belong to that company?
I wish we were so many, but no, the association is an association of professionals in Spain, and it's about 100 members. 30,000 are the lobbyists being active in Brussels at the current times.
I mixed up, sorry. Well, he's going to talk about public affairs and resolve how to make all this new world. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for the introduction, and thank you, the organizers, Theo, and the rest of the members of the network for inviting me to this workshop, this panel. let me introduce briefly what we do in political intelligence. I mean, we are a public affairs company, so what we've been doing for the last 25 years at EU level and the last 18 years in Spain. We became adults this year with our 18th anniversary. We support companies, big firms or global companies on their institutional affairs in Spain in this case, or in the countries where we are based. So we have seen the evolution of public affairs in Spain and other countries in Europe over the last 2 decades, and well, I think that has allowed us to understand how things are moving and in which direction. And basically, I'm here to kind of briefly present the current, the undergoing study we are developing together with Corporate Excellence in Spain about measuring public affairs and the results of public affairs and their impact on the companies. So very recently I went into the office of the head of communications and external affairs of a very important financial company in Spain, and to make an interview related to this project. Ángel, you were not there that day. But basically this person told me that measuring intangibles is something consultants made up to pay for something unreachable. That was her assessment. And then I remember when I heard this comment, coming from someone from the financial sector, I remember reminded me the times when financial people invented capital ratios in Basel some years ago to measure the risk associated with the financial entities. Well, there were so many unbelievers on the application of Basel 1, Basel 2, but now nobody doubts that this measuring allowed the financial sector to survive the recession some years ago. So I think we have some learning to take out of this. So why a study on public affairs and measuring the results on public affairs? Okay, let me show you some data to explain why we think this makes sense. This is a study from McKinsey a few years ago, where we can see what CEOs think about different stakeholders and their impact on their companies. And it's very interesting to see how, in practical terms, after clients, government, and institutional stakeholders are the second group of stakeholders having more impact on the companies from the point of view of CEOs, even over the impact of suppliers, investors, employees on the company. So that's why, and we see this trend increasing. So what we can see is that CEOs globally think that the role of government and regulators is very important, and it's continuously growing. And therefore, on the other hand, they also think that a very active approach on stakeholder engagement had a positive impact on their companies. And I think that's one interesting reason to think that it makes sense to do some research on public affairs, right? Also, what we are seeing and what's the trend in terms of public affairs development in Spain and in other European countries. Obviously, it's not the same. Anglo-Saxon countries have a much higher experience and kind of culture and history on corporate affairs and public affairs. Other European countries, we have moved later on this issue, but things are following the same path, and Brussels is becoming the term kind of a leading light on the way different countries are moving in this direction. Thank you. So what we see here is that basically there is more and more a business need to develop a public affairs practice and to work on this field, as we have seen before on this slide from the CEOs, right? That is causing, and that is in practical terms, making this practice to grow in different markets, Spain, other European countries continuously grow. And with this growth, there comes professionalism and regulation of the activity and the profession. And that's what we are seeing in Spain, for instance, in France, Italy, Portugal, Brussels. So this basically leads to the setting up of a corporate structure on many organizations and many firms that before didn't have a kind of corporate structure, public affairs department or division within that structure. In Spain, for instance, 10, 15 years ago, it was very, very unusual to see a department or a division on public affairs. Now it's more and more common, and I think there are more companies with this structure than companies without it. So we see clearly a development in that direction. So once you have this corporate structure, obviously you have responsible, you have a corporate affairs or public affairs director or a team, and then you define a formal strategy and you try to develop this strategy and achieve this strategy. So obviously what you need once you follow this path is to measure in order to kind of understand how you're doing things, if you're complying with your strategy, if you're achieving the objectives of your strategy, and to explain also internally the reasons why you have developed this activity and why this practice is helpful and useful for the company. Many occasions we joke a lot when we talk between public affairs professionals and with the heads of institutional affairs or public affairs of different firms. We say that internal lobbying in many cases is much tougher than external lobbying, and it is true because many cases it's much more difficult to explain within your own company what's the purpose of this practice and how it helps and how it supports the company than kind of developing your real work outside the company. That's why the challenge in many occasions is to be perceived, to move from a perception of a cost kind of structure within the company into the perception of an investment structure within the company that supports and helps the business units of the company to achieve their objectives. So that's what we try to do in the day-to-day work, and that's why public affairs professionals within the companies need more and more to measure, or at least to demonstrate the results and the impact on the company that their practice and their activity have. Okay. So what are we doing within this study? What are we searching for? Right, well, this study, first of all, is being undertaken jointly by Corporate Excellence and Political Intelligence, because we think it makes a lot of sense, and we are putting together our strengths, corporate excellence as a academic business reference in terms of intangibles and academic knowledge in this field, and ourselves, political intelligence, with our business practice and 25 years in public affairs at EU level and 20 years in Spanish market. So we are undergoing, we're developing this study, which still is in the middle of it, in order to understand better how if companies measure, what they think about measurement, what's the perception of public affairs, the heads of institutional affairs of these companies about measuring. What's the outreach of the study? Well, we are interviewing heads of institutional affairs, public affairs directors of top firms in Spain, mostly IBEX companies or global companies with a strong presence in Spain from different sectors, to give you an idea of what companies were participating in the study, such as Santander, IKEA, Volkswagen Group, Cemex, etc. So they come from different sectors of activity. And it is true that they have very different structures in terms of public affairs practice. Some of them created their departments a long time ago, others just appointed recently responsible for this area. So we are seeing a very variable structure in terms of public affairs practice within all these companies. So what we've done in terms of our methodology is first to define the study, define generally what we want to achieve, what we want to find out on the research, and based on that to define a questionnaire that we have been testing with some top people with long experience on corporate and public affairs in Spain. We tested the questionnaire with these people, 3-4 heads of institutional affairs, and based on that, then we finalized the questionnaire for the survey that we started to develop with the sample that I mentioned before a couple of months ago. So we expect to continue with this survey surveys phase until summertime, and then we will work, as you can see on this calendar, we will then work on the analysis of results over the summer. Hopefully, last quarter of this year, we will present the results of the study in Madrid. So what are the challenges that we are facing when measuring results in public affairs? Well, I just define a few of them here on this slide. One of them is measuring intangibles, that we all know it's complicated and it's challenged, it's difficult, and even more in a new practice in Spain such as this one, where history is very limited, and not only the history in terms of the companies, but also in terms of those people leading the public affairs area within those companies. Other challenges are linked to the lack of previous research on the subject. I think this is something kind of a point very important for the future, and I think it's necessary to have many more sailors working on this field in order to explore new areas and find new findings and new evidence on this area. And also, as I mentioned before, the profiles of the people involved are very different, and their perceptions are also in some cases completely different in terms of their perception, their need for measuring, and their expectations when facing measuring on this area, on this field. The objective basically will be to gather knowledge on the current practices and trends on the measuring of public affairs of all these companies. First of all, to understand the state of the art, because many of them, they want to know what's the state of the art, they want to know what others are doing, what's the kind of knowledge and trends on public affairs measuring. Some of them have been appointed recently as responsible head of institutional affairs, and coming from other practices very different, and they need at this time this type of support. Also to kind of identify common assumptions, approaches, standards, or measuring systems that kind of might be considered or developed by different companies. And also to help and guide public affairs directors on the future of measuring. Because they need tools and evidence to justify, as I said before, the positive impact of public affairs within their companies. For instance, I was thinking when writing preparing this slide, not a long time ago, a couple of years ago, we were in an event that we were organizing. Well, it was a visit basically of a politician to the headquarters of a very well-known big firm, global firm, their headquarters in Spain. So we had this politician visiting the offices, the showroom, explaining the products, the technology, because it was a technological firm. And we had a very top level representative representatives of the company, one of the vice presidents, present on this visit together with other people, and well, at the end of the visit, the politicians left, and the president said, "Okay, now let's go to work." So we thought, well, I mean, we're working here, aren't we? And that shows, an example to show how many business from the outside of the practice is not clear and it's not understood what's the purpose of what we do, which at the end basically to educate political stakeholders and other corporate stakeholders, institutional stakeholders, and to kind of provide them with information and knowledge so that when they take decisions, they have all the information that will help them to take the best decisions when legislating or drafting regulations. So basically, those are the objectives. As I was mentioning, also adding value to the public affairs function for its future development, as it has happened in the past with other departments, human resources, finance, sales, that they have needed this value in order to grow. What are we asking to these people? Okay, well, there are some basic questions that we are asking them, like, do your companies measure the efforts on public affairs? They do, they don't? Why do they measure? If they don't, why? I mean, is it not a priority? They have no resources to do it? There's lack of knowledge on how to do it? Are they concerned about the results? There are no standards, no methodology, there's a lack of data. All these questions we're asking. Also, we are trying to understand what are the reasons to measure when they do. Well, there might be different purposes, different reasons for measuring. It might be based on the need to value the impact of public affairs on the company business. Might be more linked to trying to be more efficient on the future public affairs strategy, or to demonstrate the value to the department internally, as I was mentioning before, externally, or to justify the annual budget, but simply because the CEO has asked them to do it. So there are many different reasons and facts that may be the cause for the measuring, and we want to find out on this, to have some responses on this. And also to know how relevant is this for the company. I mean, is this a priority? Is this something nice to have, but not a priority? Is it considered as something really complicated for them? What's the level of difficulty perceived by them in terms of, if compared, for instance, with other areas? Is it more difficult to measure and to understand the impact of public affairs than to measure the other intangibles such as communication or SCR or other areas of work of the company such as the legal department or the marketing department? Or perhaps it's just the fact that it hasn't been done before what complicates things more than the actual kind of externalities associated to measuring on this field. And we are also asking other questions, perhaps more specific, trying to find out if they're measuring. Basically, how do they measure? If they do, I mean, do they measure regularly? They just measure once, twice in the past. Do they measure every 1, 2 years? Is it integrated on their public affairs strategy to measure? Every year you have a strategy, you have a formal strategy, a written strategy, and then you measure at the end of your annual or biannual plan, and then based on the evidence of that measurement, you define the new plan, or how do you do it? And perhaps one of the most important questions, how do you measure? What measuring systems do you apply? And there are, we are kind of putting on the table a few of them. Basically, those based on ROI, return on investment, financial ratios, comparing the profit obtained with investment done, in terms of perhaps public subsidies obtained, cost savings due to regulation approval or not approval, tax improvements, labor improvements, positive impact on the trade value or EBITDA. All these could be considered ROI for measuring. Another possibility would be systems, measuring systems based on outcomes. That is, results achieved as a consequence of the public affairs activities or efforts. Achievement of the strategic plan, new business open, new geographic area open, better regulatory conditions on the operating markets, participation in institutional working groups, etc., etc. Some are more strategic, others are more tactical, but they could all be considered like kind of outcomes measuring systems. And then third kind of group of other systems where you could include from stakeholders, number of stakeholders engaged, internal stakeholders evaluation, participation in public consultations, legislative pictures of defeats, etc., etc. So that's what we are trying to find out. As I said, we are in the middle of the project, so we do not have results yet. But just to give you a grasp, basically, what we are seeing that mostly they want to measure, but they consider it complicated and difficult for different reasons, such as some of the ones I just mentioned. It seems that the outcomes approach is the most appealing one, and the one better considered by most of them, and the one mostly used by those who are putting in practice some measuring systems. And also we found out that some are investing, thanks Ángel, some time and resources in developing their own measuring systems, which is very interesting, and we're not sure we will find it, but we are finding some companies going further are developing their own measuring systems because they consider that there is nothing in the in the sandbox which is useful for them, or they're not happy with the kind of KPIs or measuring systems they're using. They want to develop their own specific ones. And to end my presentation, basically I would say that also there are two key questions that we want to find out about. One of them is, which are very related, are KPIs on public affairs measuring applicable to different organizations? Because obviously they can be applied to a certain extent to different organizations, then the benefits will be very high and the learning curve will be exponential. You can share your expertise and your research and your kind of work on KPIs with others. And linked to this, is it possible to model public affairs measuring? Well, if this is possible, obviously, that would be very helpful for public affairs practitioners in the EU. This is what we're doing. Let's see what the final results of the study, and obviously we will be very happy to share this with you by the end of this year. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Javier. We are looking forward to seeing the results of the survey and the research. Thank you for the quiz. Well, measuring public affairs really is a difficult task. It's very interesting, the impact in the CEOs, how they perceive the public affair, and also it's really funny when you try to explain there about internal and external lobbying. So I'm sure that you're going to ask a lot of things. Well, now we have the third speaker with us. He's Alberto López Valenzuela. He's Catalonian, founder and CEO at Alva in New York. He spent 15 days in London and 15 days in New York. So very stressful. And also he's bringing the talent of the Mediterranean Sea, because his wife is from Italy, to the Atlantic area of the world. I really miss the time that we used to import talent from overseas to the Mediterranean Sea, and now things have changed, and also some of them are moving to the Pacific Ocean. Well, Alberto brings a solid knowledge of the industry as well as the ability to successfully lead in high teams commercials. Alberto has spent the last 20 years working in the media sector, developing relationships at different levels and sectors of the FTSE in areas of reputation analysis, leadership, sales, marketing. Before founding Alva, lived and worked in London for global media companies such as Cision and Data Monitor, where he held executive positions such as Sales and Marketing Director and VP of Sales in emerging markets. Alberto has a first-class Bachelor of Arts Media Management degree from the University of the Arts in London and MBA from the Cass Business School. We share really in love with London. Also, when you were studying there, working hard, being promoted, and doing really useful things, I was wasting my time. I was in a speedy way of getting rid of my family heritage, living in London as well, because I was doing my PhD research. The title was British correspondent during the Peninsular War. So my father was a little bit upset, saying, "What are you doing with the money? Do something really proper things, no?" Because all my ancestors they are doctors, cardiologists. So the children, the boy, the younger, he started to work as a journalist and also an historian. So what are you doing in London? Do proper things. Anyway, you probably will, my father will be more happy with you, I'm sure about it. But anyway, just, I'm not kidding, really, it's true. Well, now it's your time. Thank you very much for being with us. I know that it's been difficult to you to just stop in this stressful life. Please be free to start.
It's all good. So thanks very much, everybody, for being here and for inviting me today. I think you give me too much credit. I don't think my father would be that proud. But as I was listening to this presentation of my colleagues, I had a thought, and I think that what I wanted to do was to make this presentation really for the students. You guys are hopefully the game changers of tomorrow, and I think it's very important that whatever we've learned over the last 20, 25 years or so, we actually share it with you. So actually, the world that you leave behind is much better than the one that you found. You probably don't know, and you probably are going to disagree with me, but I actually think that you are studying a profession that, in my view, in the next 10 years is going to be the third. I think I'm on the top 3 roles in the corporate executive. And you might think I'm crazy. Hopefully, what I'm about to show you actually indicates that maybe I'm not that crazy. So I want to actually explain why I believe that your role is going to play a critical role in businesses in the future. So some of my sort of my curriculum or my sort of achievements have already been told, but I've never worked in communications. I've never worked in corporate affairs. I've never been a journalist. Actually, I come from the business world. So I started after doing La Mili, when in Spain people used to do La Mili. I got a job typing adverts at La Vanguardia, and that was my first job and my first touch with the media world. And yeah, I was typing some classified adverts that probably will not be approved today, as you would imagine. I studied economics in Spain, and yeah, in Barcelona, and then I was working for a publishing company for about a couple of years at night, and other years during the day. And one of the things that I decided to do for my holidays was to actually go abroad to study English. I actually thought at the time it was very important to study English, and quite frankly, the English that they used to teach, probably it's changed so much now, but the English that they used to teach at school, it was quite precarious. Yeah, I actually spent my 2 summers, 1 summer in Dublin, and again, it wasn't all studying, it was 3-4 hours studying, the rest was fun. And then another year I went to Toronto, and that actually gave me the it gave me this sort of the motivation to move abroad, and I decided to actually study abroad. I moved to London. I've never been to London before. I actually thought that it'd be an incredible place, and it is an incredible place. But it's a huge shock when you are living in Spain with such a beautiful weather, in a beautiful family, sheltered by your mum, and all those things that we normally take for granted. So I studied in London when the world was changing, and we were moving from the old media world to the new media world. So that was 1995 to 1998, and that was when the world discovered the internet, and businesses changed forever. I worked for many years in the business information space, doing all sorts of roles, some commercial roles, some corporate development roles, working on M&A, but always working in business. Until 2009, I was fired by the company I was working for, and I decided that was the perfect time for me to set up a business and to go solo. So the business that I set up alongside other colleagues, because it's never the feat or the success of one person, it's always the success of many people that are dedicated to the mission, and they join you in that mission. The business today works with about 150 global companies. We have offices in London, New York, Johannesburg. We work also with a Chilean company. We employ 60 plus people, and a lot of them are engineers, developers, people that actually write code. And again, I've never been a developer, I've never been an engineer, but one thing that I always had very clear was that actually business needed better intelligence. So in 2008, in 2017, 2 amazing things happened to me. One is that probably the most amazing thing happened is that my daughter was born, and actually that provoked a change in my life. Where no more dining out, and no more going out, and that actually meant much more time at home. So I decided that I was going to use that time wisely, and I started writing a book that was published in 2018, and the book was a collection of, again, experiences that many people generously have shared with me on the role of corporate affairs, the role of communications, and how the world was changing. So I was very lucky that actually the book was published in November 2018. It was covered by Forbes magazine, and it was a book that it's a manifesto for the profession. It's a manifesto as to why corporate affairs communications is going to be absolutely critical in the business in the future. So the first thing that the central idea of the book, and I was thinking initially to write a book about reputation, but Ángel has done such amazing work on the topic of reputation that I knew I was gonna be as good as him. So I decided to actually change tack, and for me what was fundamental was this concept of the social contract. Businesses actually have a relationship with society. Businesses have a relationship with stakeholders, and therefore the fulfillment of that social contract is critical to the success of the business, to the value creation, and even more so in today's world. So the question that I had was, are companies ready to fulfill the social contract in the current business context? The business context has changed so much in the last 25 years due to globalization, the digital revolution, the sustainability agenda, and the rule book that existed 20, 25 years ago, even 15 years ago, has completely changed. And you actually see companies that are disappearing because actually they are unable to fulfill the social contract. It's not really only about making money, but it's also about keeping your stakeholders aligned and supportive to your cause. That's what really is fundamental. So the book really looked at this concept of the social contract, and also provided a framework to answer the questions and to keep companies to fulfill that contract. So that the key thing is, one of the key things is that this concept of the new normal, which is the current economic, business, social context. And as I mentioned, through globalization, sustainability, and the digital revolution, the context has changed forever. And you have now three very strong tensions and forces. Hyper-transparency. There's almost it's almost privacy is no longer respected, as we know from Facebook and others. And by the way, I don't use Facebook because I actually think it's an extremely dangerous platform, and I have views I have some strong views about it. So hyper-transparency, interconnectivity. Today everybody has a cell phone, everybody has a smartphone. It's so easy just to connect with each other. And then this when I was working at Vanguardia, when I was working in Grupo Zeta, the publishing houses actually had an authority, had a role in society, which was actually to curate and publish a perspective. Today, that role of the media has almost disappeared, because there have been so many platforms that have actually emerged, that have created this concept that I refer in the book as media anarchy. And that, when you combine interconnectivity, hyper-transparency, and media anarchy, it makes it extremely difficult for companies to actually navigate in that environment. And this is why, again, I believe that the role of corporate affairs communications is critical. But it's critical not as it's not the role as it's understood today. Again, I had the opportunity to interview a number of leading corporate affairs and communications professionals from Fortune 500 companies and FTSE 100 companies, and you actually see a different profession emerging. And I'll go into some examples. So in here, I sort of present kind of the roadmap of the framework, and I'm going to go into some of these points in detail. But when you see companies that are very, very successful, they are, one of the reasons why they are successful is because they are consistent, they live consistent to their values. They are very consistent in, they are clear about their role in society, and they have a connection thread between their values and how they operate in society, how they communicate, how they behave. And as Ángel has already mentioned, the employees really buy into the mission or into the movement that that company is trying to achieve. That's the key starting point. That sort of knowledge of the core and knowledge of what you stand for is fundamental. And you actually see increasingly more and more that actually CEOs are taking a more public stance on what the company stands for. So that's critical. In here I talk about the connecting leader, and in a minute I'll explain the role of the connecting leader. So I'm going to park that concept for the moment. Then there is this idea of being authentic, being connected to your values, but also being connected with your stakeholders. It's not really about how well connected you are internally, but also how well connected you actually, how much you take on board what your stakeholders expect from you. And each stakeholder group will have different expectations. So again, that creates even more complexity in the business today. We've talked about culture. Culture is fundamental in today's business. This idea of window dressing, this idea of managing reputation from a spin perspective, it's flawed. It doesn't work in the long run or in the short run. It's going to come and bite you. And there are many cases that actually happen, and companies are learning that actually investing in culture, investing on that authenticity is critical. We've also talked about intelligent systems, and again, this is close to my heart. My company, it's a provider of reputation intelligence for companies, and again, it's very difficult to change things in the organization, especially at the senior level, if you don't have intelligence in your hands. In the old days, not so old days, but actually 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a seasoned corporate affairs director or communications director would actually provide advice to the executive, and everybody in the executive room will have their own reports, their own metrics, and typically the communications person will actually have their opinion. They were the consigliere, they were the expert. That no longer plays. In an age where actually data is so readily available, you need to have that intelligence in your hand. And there's something that I wanna hone in on this concept of reputation. Reputation has, as you probably know, has many definitions, and many people sort of pursue reputation for the sake of reputation. What's critical to understand, and what's changing, that actually reputation is your proxy for your social contract. Basically, reputation, if you actually are delivering the right social contract and doing it effectively, it's very likely that the outcome will be a good and sound and respected reputation. If you don't, it's likely that you will have a bad reputation. So what reputation actually, it's that proxy that indicates how well you're fulfilling your stakeholder obligations and your social obligations. That changes the paradigm of PR, of the old PR, which was, in the old days, it was about spin, it was about manipulation. As I said, that no longer plays, which is good news. So what's this role of the connecting leader, of the corporate affairs of, I was going to say of today, maybe, I think of all the companies that I've worked with, I would say that about 5 to 10% fulfill this or have structured with this in this manner or have these disciplines. But what's really interesting is that those companies are some of the most successful companies and the most admired companies. So, as I said earlier, so in here we have 5 different disciplines. The one that I always like to start with is the internal connector. It's about connecting with the rest of the organization, connecting with the culture of the business, and ensuring that you're connecting with the truth of the business. That is fundamental. Then there's the role of the external connector, i.e. connecting with your external stakeholders, your investors, your regulators, your NGOs, your communities, all of those stakeholders that actually play an influence in your organization. Then you have bringing the outside perspective into the organization. This view that actually companies for a long time they didn't really care about stakeholders, but they didn't really care about some stakeholders. It's flawed. Of course, organizations are there to create economic value, but they're also there to create social value. And social value is created by connecting with many of your external stakeholders. Businesses have a responsibility to society. The fourth discipline is what most of the communications and corporate affairs spend their time on, which is on the communication. And in here I refer to it as the narrative owner. Communication today is all about storytelling. It's all about, it's not only about just sending messages, but actually really connecting with your different audiences in a way that really engages those audiences. And then the flip side of that is the reputation and risk management. Of course, in this era of media anarchy, you're gonna be challenged. There are gonna be platforms out there that actually are gonna spread things that are probably untruth about your organization, and there might be employees that will do things that are not aligned with your values. So you need to have a reputational risk processes and protocol to ensure that value is not being eroded or mitigated. We talked earlier about intelligence. This is what I'm showing here is intelligence on steroids. What's really interesting is that the traditional communications function will have very sort of traditional metrics, in some cases output-based metrics, i.e. Measuring what the communications function is doing, as opposed to what it actually means to the business and how it actually affects the business. Let me break it out for you. The CEO is not really that interested on the outputs. The CEO is actually interested on how all that activity affects the business. And so raising the conversation to that level is probably the best thing that actually the function can actually do. Linking metrics to outputs, but also linking to outcomes rather. But linking the metrics to outcomes with the stakeholders that really matter. Again, there's I have actually come across companies that actually they collect intelligence on all the stakeholders, everybody, and some of them affect you 1%, some of them actually affect you maybe 30–40%. In an environment of scarce resources, you probably want to focus on the ones that actually have the biggest impact. Keep an eye on the ones that actually, the small ones, because they might have an amplification effect into your big ones, but keep track, on your big ones. And here it's what's really interesting about this new paradigm is that actually integrates internal metrics with external metrics, and this is fundamental again to have meaningful and important conversations in the executive. So I have a chapter in the book called "Not So Fast, Not So Easy," and the chapter actually talks about, okay, is the communications function in the FTSE 100, in the Global 2000, in the Fortune 500 ready for this? And the reality is that to ascertain, to actually capture the current state, I analyzed 4 different surveys from different providers, and all of them they had a similar insight, which is the communications function, barring some exceptions, it's still very focused on the tactical aspect of the function. There is an aspiration from the communication leaders to become more strategic, but the reality is that there is likely to be a misunderstanding of the value that communications can bring to the organization from the CEO, and in some cases there's a sort of a lack of confidence from communications professionals to actually be more influential within the organization. The appetite is there, and the need from the executive is there, but somehow that leap hasn't really changed. So the last chapter of the book actually deals with a topic that I'm extremely passionate. In fact, my next book is likely to be about technology for good, and because I think we live at a time that actually technology can become either a massive driver of negativity in society, or actually can be an incredible driver of social good. This chapter actually talks about in an age where in a few years' time, where we're going to live in a AI dominated and automated business context. What's the role of humans, and what humans will actually be most valuable for? And again, this is where I think that the students of today have an incredible opportunity, because actually it'll be all about interpretation. It'll be all about understanding the context. It will be all about helping the CEO understand what everything that's going on in the world actually means to the business. Are businesses ready for this new world? It's a survey from Deloitte in 2018 said that actually about only 23% of CEOs that they were surveyed, and it was about 3,000 of them, said that they were ready for the industrial revolution and the fourth, the industry 4.0. The rest understand that automation is going to happen, and it's going to have an impact on employees, but actually they don't really know how they're going to be dealing with it. So again, I actually believe that a connected leader is going to be a critical role in that equation. And that's a very, very sort of brief synopsis of the thinking and the book. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Quite interesting. I mean, the aspect of the stakeholder, the social contract, the reputation, also the new PR role. Interesting how the SEO is linking the metrics internal, external. Well, now we start the discussion. So fire your own will. So start whatever you want. So, any question?
Thank you very much for your presentations. I have some insights to get back to my corporate communication class, so to discuss it with my students. I have a question, and oh, okay, thank you. So I have a question. It depends who wants to answer it. It's your choice. It is on the phone market, but it's not far away.
I'm just kidding.
Well, it starts from something you said when discussing about corporate excellence, and you're talking about winning trust, admiration, and respect, connecting to corporate excellence. Do you think that, for example, Apple is practicing corporate excellence because they are, for example, admired by their consumers? But I'm not sure they are actually working for or thinking too much about the people that are behind the consumers. So basically, for example, their price strategy is not taking the person into consideration, but rather trying to take advantage of certain, well, let's say issues someone has, or for example, they don't really invest in CSR. But they do consider themselves an excellent company and practicing corporate excellence. So what are your opinions on that? But of course, it connects with what you said. For example, on leadership or something like that.
It is a very interesting question, because you mentioned that they think that they are a best-in-class company. So the real question is, does it matter if you as the board of directors of any organization think that you are the best company in the world? I think that the challenge is taking into account that perceptions are the reality which counts. So the way of managing any organization is by listening to the stakeholder expectations and the way they judged your activities. Because if the result of this assessment is positive, you're going to get positive behaviors. But on the other hand, if you take into account only the opinions of the C-suite or the board of directors talking about the reality of the organization, I think that's completely irrelevant. So if you want to really get in touch with your stakeholders and the future, I think that you have to manage your company basically by listening to those expectations and taking those expectations on board and transforming your organization according to the expectations of your stakeholders. I know it's a long answer, but coming back to the idea of what is the winning factor if you do things right. The winning factor is that you are going to get admiration, respect, and trust from your stakeholders. But in order to get this admiration, trust, and respect from them, you have to fulfill the social contract. You have to fulfill the expectations that they have. And those expectations are very holistic. I mean that when the stakeholders of Apple are judging Apple, they have a holistic approach. If Apple wants to gain the respect, admiration, and trust immediately you are going to discover that there are various dimensions where Apple should be best in class. And you have to fulfill all those dimensions. And coming back to a very simple model that we have developed a few years ago with another consultancy firm, in order to get a way of measuring reputation, because reputation is this feeling of admiration, trust, and respect. What we discovered is that the only way you can get that feeling from your stakeholders is by doing things in the right way in 7 different areas. One of them is an excellent products and services, so the commercial offer, if you want, which has to be perfect. And probably in the case of Apple and many other technology organizations, they do very well on that. But it is not enough. At the same time, you have to deliver on other social contract expectations, which has to do with ethics and the way you deal with transparency and the rules of the way you deal with ethics. So probably Apple is not doing so well in that specific dimension. And then you have another dimension which is extremely important, is the way you deal with your employees. Are you building a place where you have a system of shared beliefs which engage your employees or not? So that's another dimension. And then CSR, if you want, or sustainability, that's another one. It's impossible to get trust and admiration from a company which is not doing their job in terms of social responsibility. Then you have to be innovative, which means that technology is not an end in itself. You have to develop solutions for people, which makes their life easier. So innovation is another dimension. And then you have also the idea of having in charge of the company someone which can be described as a connecting leader. So the quality of the management is key, and the style of management can be a connected one or rather the opposite. So the quality of management of the leadership is another factor. And then obviously the financial results. So if you do the right things in those 7 dimensions, probably you are going to deserve the trust, admiration, and respect that you are trying to get. So ask that question when thinking about Apple or any other organizations. Are they doing well in this holistic approach? And if you think about the technology industry in general, I think that they are doing very well in some of them, but not so well in 3 key ones, 3 dimensions which are getting more and more important, which has to do with ethics, CSR, and also the way they deal with their own employees. So
I covered Apple in my book,
Yeah.
so I can give you my perspective on it. I mean, what's remarkable is that actually Apple is the market capitalization is much bigger than many countries today, and that's an incredible feat for a company that had to borrow 100 million in 1997 from Microsoft to stay afloat. So that's an incredible feat. I think what's really interesting about Apple is that they have changed society, or they have had a contribution to society that goes far beyond what we actually see. There's been so many sort of ecosystems, marketplaces, enablers that actually exist, partly because of the innovations that actually Apple have brought, and actually that we take for granted. Even before the cell phones or there was Windows and there was Macintosh, and Macintosh was always a far superior product because Steve Jobs loved the idea of the user experience and making the user experience a pleasant one, and sort of technology being an enabler of progress in society. What's really interesting is they have a number of issues related to their working conditions with their partners in Taiwan, and they probably have not handled those in the best way, but also you have to understand, and I'm not an Apple shareholder, so I'm trying to take an independent perspective here, but it's a contractor of Apple. It's not actually Apple employees. What Apple actually has done is send a number of Apple employees to investigate those working conditions and ensure that those working conditions are done fairly. The other thing that actually people consider Steve Jobs as someone that wasn't charitable. Actually, that's really a fallacy. He didn't believe that charity or donations was something that you had to talk about. And in fact, actually, it's documented that actually he did give a lot of donations, but actually that came out once he died because of these where others talk much more about the donations that they bring. What's really interesting also is what's next with Apple. They are putting billions and billions and billions of investment on healthcare, and actually ensuring that the devices that we carry in our pockets are actually going to be done are going to support our health. And what Apple is also changing is it's really interesting that technology companies, if we don't look too closely, they are all considered in the same brush. But actually, the ethics of Facebook versus the ethics of Apple are completely different. I mean, Apple really takes privacy to the core of the organization and to the core of the products. Whereas Facebook is extremely cavalier with privacy. In fact, actually, they don't really care that much about that. So I think we cannot underestimate not only the financial impact that they have had, but also the social impact that they have had. And I think thanks to them, they've transformed society. There are many things in society that they are wrong, yeah. But I also think that actually have had more good than actually they are normally credited for.
May I just add, I think it's very interesting what you were both saying. I was just thinking of a case from another company, same sector as Apple, competitor of Apple. They had a kind of crisis with one of the devices not long ago when it was in the market, and linking with what Ángel said about one of the 7 areas of work, which is ethics and transparency. This company reacted in a very transparent way, apologizing, saying that indeed there was a problem with this new device, and they removed it out of the market immediately, and they basically started working immediately afterwards to try to solve that problem with their new devices, and being pretty transparent about it. And I think at the end of the day, that helped them to build on their reputation, and the reputation, 2 or 3 years after what happened now, I believe is even better than the one they had before. So sometimes you can even take that opportunity to show your commitment with your customers, and work on it. And what you can compare with other companies. I'm also thinking about another very famous case on the automotive industry long ago as well. If you compare how these two companies reacted and worked after what happened, I think you can see some differences, and I think you need to learn out of that the impact on the reputation, on their capitalization in the markets after a couple of years, 3 years, and take some lessons out of it.
Well, yeah. Okay. Thank you for sharing with us all your knowledge, and in order to help us to define what is corporate diplomacy, and as you know, it's one of our key concepts of this MARPE Diplo project. I'm asking you, please, what is for you corporate diplomacy? It's a new level for international public relations or for international public affairs, or a new level for corporate communication, or in your opinion, it's really a new concept, and if it is, what it is for you? Thank you.
Ángel and myself were talking about this before this panel, so it's really very appropriate to talk about it right now. And I think there are different understandings of what corporate diplomacy means, and I think I have my opinion, others will have their own opinion, and will not be the same. I believe that in my understanding, corporate diplomacy is a way of defining institutional relations from companies, and how companies kind of interact with their stakeholders on the institutional world, not only political stakeholders or the public or the administrative stakeholders or the government stakeholders, but all those kind of working and being part of that ecosystem, such as the consumer associations, NGOs, KOLs, journalists, trade unions, corporate associations, etc., etc. So that's my understanding. I believe it's partly a labeling that helps to fight the negative perception of some concepts, some ways that have been used in the past to define the same practices as a lobby, and the bad perception that the lobbying concept has in some kind of areas, or in many countries, or in the public opinion. I think it's a nice way of defining something which has been done for a long time, and that it's very, in my view, very associated to institutional relations, integrated institutional relations with all your stakeholders at that level.
Yeah, I think it's for me it's the first time I've heard that concept. But the more I've learned about it, when I received the information, I did a bit of search on that. I think it's probably about the labeling. What's really interesting is that the integration between business and society is becoming more and more. In the old days, you had business on one side and government and society on another side. But because governments are becoming so challenged, governments are actually relying on businesses to deliver services that should be delivered by government. That's a sort of a dynamic in the context that actually means that a new skill is required, and that's partly what I wanted to cover around the external connector. You know, it's that done in a way that it's very much about finding a common ground, finding a sort of a way to in the past, I think businesses have been accused, and maybe rightly so, to being quite one-sided, whereas actually maybe the corporate diplomacy requires a much more balanced approach, much more inclusive approach towards those different institutions and stakeholders.
Well, from my perspective, I'm going to go back to basics, because I would like to go back to the chart that I showed about the 6 capitals organizations, and I think that this growth is the reaction of organizations from different perspectives, and after so many crises, everyone realized that we need to recover trust and the social contract from many different stakeholders, and taking into account that need, I think that companies and institutions need to develop different functions related to fulfill the same goal, which is increase the strength of this social and relational capital of your organization. And you need different functions working together. And probably corporate diplomacy is a very interesting one. But at the same time, I have to confess that for me, because of the novelty probably of all these functions, there is a mess, a conceptual mess, where it is quite difficult to make a clear distinction between what corporate affairs is doing, public affairs is doing, corporate communications, understood not in the old-fashioned way. So what companies are doing is they do what they can. So because they need to manage those intangible capitals in a proper way, they find different alternatives, and there are probably more than 70 ways of defining and labeling the role of this function. I'm just remembering one of our trustees has just defined the role, adding functions in his title, and his description now is Global Director of Communications, Public Affairs, Corporate Brand, Reputation, and Sustainability. That's the title. And you see, he's describing the different boxes that are trying to be integrated in his role, and it is not the exception, because a few months ago, when Coca-Cola headquarters, they defined this role as PAX, Public Affairs, PAX is Public Affairs, Communication and Sustainability. And you find others which are integrated in different roles, and they just add the titles and define sometimes, and amongst the companies belonging to corporate excellence, the one in charge of the whole thing in some companies is called the Public Affairs Director. Communications is reporting to him, CSR, as well as the brand, as well as in some cases marketing and advertising. Because it is a nonsense to think that you have to have your relationship with your stakeholders in silos. So you have marketing dealing with clients and human resources with your employees, etc., etc. So it's a nonsense. Well, it is not a nonsense. It's the way you needed to organize your company in the 90s. It was the most efficient way of organizing your companies, having silos with vertical bonuses, and now probably it is the most difficult thing to achieve in our organization is the transformation of these silos into something which is much more horizontal, because we need to approach this idea of building trust with all the stakeholders in an integrated way. So I have to confess that for me it's a bit of a mess. This idea of how can we define and label this so important and critical function, and I fully agree with Alberto. A few years ago, when I was working in market research, I realized that the executive chairmen, the CEOs of companies, in their background, they started by doing market research. And I thought it was very logical, because their business was absolutely a good answer to have the proper insights from the most important stakeholder at that time, the consumer. And that's the reason why they moved from knowing perfectly well the consumer to the top function in the company. So probably the top function in the company in the future CEOs of companies are going to come from these areas, from communications and public affairs. Just because of this idea of being connected with your stakeholders.
Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to see this actually present in this conference. Though I must say that I come from a different field. Once I received the information that this conference was going to take place, immediately I enrolled, because I'm passionate about diplomacy. So I thought, okay, let's go for diplomacy. But taking into account that I studied at the diplomatic school of Spain, you can imagine that my point of view is a bit different. Not saying one is better than the other one, just saying that I see diplomacy as a state bilateral diplomacy, and that, among other reasons, is why I believe this is so interesting. Now the question, forgive me if it's too obvious for you, is the next one. What's the relation between this corporate diplomacy and other stakeholders, as governments, NGOs, civil society, well, external actors, as you mentioned? Thank you.
So the relationship between which parties?
The company.
Yeah.
So NGOs, governments,
of course.
and so on. Because I see that you mentioned markets, business, and so on. And as I said, it's not my field, so
Sure.
I don't know, how, for example, Apple, Google, all this stuff can be, related to government in terms of corporate diplomacy and public affairs.
Sure. So I can give you some examples of some real examples. So one of our clients is this is just to sort of indicate the interrelationship with government and other stakeholders. So one of our clients is one of the biggest diamond producers in the world, and they have operations in Africa, and they have operations in Botswana. So, but these operations, they normally have a license for maybe 5-10 years. Yeah. So that license can be extremely political, and it's very important that actually this company is seen as a a good corporate, a good citizen within the communities. So it's not only paying the right taxes, it's not only looking after the communities, giving employment and fair employment practices. It's also making sure that you do it in a sustainable way, and making sure that that license is not really taken away from you by actually doing the wrong things. Because actually, in an environment like this, the opposition can actually be putting pressure into the government for giving that license to a company that is HQ'd in the UK. Yeah. So it's a very complex environment that requires that that company needs to have a very sophisticated and dedicated team of professionals that understand how to engage at that level. And in many cases, it's at a very diplomatic level. Yeah? The cost of that company not having that license, it's, you can imagine, 10 years of not having that license. It's remarkable. So it's a significant one. So as you were describing your question, that was sort of one of the examples that came to mind, and it's something that I've heard Ángel say many times, is about keeping your license to operate. But this is really a license, not an artificial license. This is an actual extracting license in that particular community. And actually, I wanted to say something else. So, with this company, the way that actually they test the strength of the social contract, they actually collect lots of intelligence. And again, this is not something that it's typically it's shared or understood, but actually they do ongoing surveys in the community. They do ongoing surveys for grievance on the employees. They are tracking the local media. They are interviewing all the sort of the relevant politicians on an ongoing basis. There's all sorts of intelligence that they collect to again assess the strength of that relationship. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. May I add something? And I think it has to do with the way business, the role of business in society is understood nowadays. Because taking the terminology that you use in your book about 3 different typologies of companies, I think it's an evolutionary way of seeing the role of companies in society, because you mentioned first companies who think that they are profit-first companies. The second evolution is think that you are a company where you can describe your role as profit and society. And then the evolution is society first.
Yeah.
And this evolution has to do with the idea that the challenges that we face as citizens of the world are so huge that cannot be solved without the collaboration of the different stakeholders, companies, governments, and ONGs or NGOs. So I think that probably, if you are thinking about a business which has a long-term perspective, obviously, because if not, we're in the profit first. But if you are thinking about being there in the next, I don't know how many years, probably you are going to move to this idea of society first, because it's going to give, to ensure that you are going to be sustainable for a longer period of time, and at the same time you are going to ensure your license to operate, because this license to operate is social, and you have to do many things related to your stakeholders to get the license to operate from the regulators. So I think it's an evolutionary way of understanding the role of business in society. And I strongly believe that we are moving towards this idea of society first. And we are going to demonstrate to the investors that they too and fully understand that the way of ensuring their future income is by having more and more companies persuaded that society first is the right approach.
I think companies, what they look more and more is the way to align their company interests, objectives with the general interest of their society interest. And that's the key way, in my view, to try to obtain your business objectives, but at the same time to contribute to society and to make sure that you're aligned with the society needs and with the general interest. And indeed, at the end, that's what we try to do with our practice in public affairs, to see which are the ways in which we can contribute and we can align company interest with the general interest. And I'll give you a very simple example of a practical example, which is now very much in the headlines in Spain and other countries, for instance, which is the entrance of e-scooter companies in local areas, in cities, Europe or in Spain. For the last year, we've seen, for instance, like some companies are very aggressive entering the market. They put their e-scooters on the streets, and basically they didn't kind of previously undertook the corporate diplomacy strategy of presenting themselves to the city council, trying to understand what are the city council needs in terms of mobility and sustainable mobility, and how they can align the city council needs with their own operations, and how they can contribute to intermodality, to kind of safer and more sustainable mobility. Other companies, they're trying to do something different. They're trying to see that and to try to look for this alignment and try to identify ways of cooperation with the public transport, with the city council, and kind of show they are responsible companies which are trying to support responsible mobility and contribute to responsible mobility. And I think that's a very basic example of showing how you can have different approaches. And it's also interesting to see how, based also on your business culture, or if it's American, Asian, European, it influences your approach to this. You've seen it. And at the end of the day, it has a very important impact on your business, because some of these companies enter the market without, in a very aggressive way, and the city council just basically they seize all their devices and basically ban them from operating in the streets of their cities. So that's how things work sometimes.
So, thank you very much. I'm really happy to hear the difference between Apple and Facebook, the core, social contract, depend at the end on the founder commitment. I'm really happy to still hearing that. Well, students, they say that you're going to be the game changers of tomorrow. You're going to play a critical role in future, and also you're going to help the CEOs to link to the new world. Well, surrounded by this wonderful sailors crew, feels like if I were in the Discovery era or age, so it's up to you to sail with them. Well, I enjoy a lot, I learned so much. I feel myself a little bit linked to the old-fashioned times, perhaps because I'm still wearing a tie. Thank you, because you know. So now, in the same spirit, now we have a cocktail. That's a very old expression, so groovy. Okay, Angel, Ángel, Javier, Alberto, MARPE team, thank you very much, and we'll see you in future.